Welcome back to the LEC. On our last day of this Super Week, Excel managed to pick up their first win of the season, and I have Finn joining me to talk about this game. Thank you very much for joining me. Congrats on winning this game. I want to touch on the last moments of the game. Your team was prepping for Elder. You were rushing to the base. Talk me through the communication and the reasoning for you to make this play.
Well, you know, so the last 2 days we had pretty rough late games. We've kind of always been in a position where we are kind of winning, but then we were kind of throw it at the fight at Elder. So when I saw this dance, I was like, I don't like this. I'm just gonna tip to the base and end. You guys try to stop their base and do whatever you can. So I just kind of made that call in the moment because I didn't like where this dance was going. And thankfully my team performed very well at the Elder fight, and they chunked the Wukong and the Viego enough, so when they came, I could actually 1v2 them. And yeah, we won the game, finally. It's a huge relief to finally win a game. Yeah,
I can imagine. That was a really nice call from you, Finn. And I want to say, I'm really glad that you're back in EU, finally. What inspired you in the Excel project for you to come back to Europe?
I just think when I was in America, I didn't really feel like I fit in there. I felt like it wasn't really for me, the whole environment there. And for me, if there was an opportunity to come back to Europe, I really wanted to take it. Excel showed interest and they offered me some tryouts. And yeah, it just went really fast. All the negotiations seemed like we were on the same page, and they were happy with me. I was really happy with them. So yeah, I'm really happy I managed to come back.
Well, it's nice to see you happy, and I'm extra happy when I see EU players coming back to EU also. Last question for you, Phil. Finn, how do you think the competition on the top lane evolved since your days with Rogue, since you left?
Well, frankly, I think it's not I'm not super impressed with top lane right now in any region. I thought I would struggle really hard coming back from NA, but so far I have not struggled. I mean, maybe that's too cocky to say after I got solo killed this game by Alphari, but to be fair, Alphari is also an NA come homer like me. So, but yeah, I think top lane is, especially since I think Bwipo was a huge part why top lane in Europe was so strong. It was always fun playing against him. He was always very creative. Seeing Wunder in form makes me hopeful because I think he is such a good player. And Alphari obviously as well. But other than that, there's not anyone that is like particularly impressive, I would say.
I see. Well, and it's nice to see you have confidence coming back to EU now. Finn, thank you so much for the interview. Congrats on picking up the first win, and we'll see you next week for week 2.
Thank you very much.
And back to the studio for post-game about this match. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Laure. I am joined by Trouble. Yeah, quick shot's gone, but we're going to be taking a closer look at how Excel's got their first win of the LEC season. But before we dive into all the gameplay and all the nitty-gritty stuff, let's have a little look at the draft, because Trouble, what did we make of that?
I mean, honestly, I was like, put Finn on a carry! And they finally did it. I think this was very distinctive of Excel. They wanted to play towards the top side of the map. They locked in the Zanzarah, then they locked in the Jayce, and they made sure that they wanted to play towards the top side of the map. With LeBlanc together, you can get very easy roams towards the top side and try to get the Jayce ahead.
Yeah, you see, it's actually interesting because I also like what Vitality did. Kajal mentioned it a bit himself in the champ select, that Vitality's, realistically speaking, on paper, with the Wukong into Jayce, decent matchup.
Yep.
With the Vex into the LeBlanc, with the shielding and the fear you have, usually it's a pretty good matchup for them. But obviously, once we get later into the game, we see that some of them are getting shot down with that. But speaking of gameplay, Trouble,
I mean, okay. Let's calm down, everyone. Overreactions are coming in hot. Yes, this is a super team on paper. And yes, they are 0-3 after the first 3 games. But these guys are called a super team for a reason. And I wanted to show you a couple of glimpses of light in that team and their individuals that are in it. I'm just going to start with Selfmade right here. And I'm going to give you a little bit of context onto the map as well. Because right here, Selfmade is done clearing his entire bot side of the map. And then he's going straight into the top side. Now you guys might be wondering, why is Selfmade going towards the top side? Why is he leaving cracks and raids unattended completely? Well, that's because top side of the map is the exact same for Excel once more. You see, Finn has stacked an entire wave. He wants to push the top side, and probably Markun could be somewhere around trying to set up for the dive on that Wukong and get the Jayce ahead. Selfmade is such a great Dachshund, I would say, in German. He smells blood from really far away. He sees that dive incoming, sees if Markun is there, he's not. Therefore, he takes the flash off of the Jayce. That's why this is very important. It's because the Jayce is a pushing lane. You want to punish the Wukong very early into the game, but due to the lack of flash here, it is not possible for the Jayce to push anymore. Therefore, the Jayce falls behind.
Yeah, I also know there is some other intricate things that happens later with
absolutely.
Finn apparently picking up a blue buff or anything like this.
Okay, the funny thing is that this blue buff right here, which is getting picked up, what was it, 10, 12 minutes into the game? Is the first blue buff that goes down for the side of XL. That is the first blue buff that spawns on the map, and it goes to Finn. Now, a lot of people might not spot that, but the fact that Finn takes the blue buff, the first blue buff, off of his jungler right here, is because his jungler says, yeah, good luck, have fun in the top lane. We're not going to deal with you anymore. You're all on your own. Alphari smells that. The second he sees Finn with that blue buff, he knows that Zanzarah ain't touching that top lane ever again. He plays a prank straight into the bush, and Finn doesn't know he's actually camping there. So he's gonna use his kit very, very well. You will see that he will engage on Finn the second that huge wave with the cannon comes. He will wait for Finn's flash, and then after he uses it, he will use the R2. So here's a couple of things that the Vitality members, at least individually, can get down so well to prove that they are the stars that people make them to be. All they're lacking is that team play.
Well, that's the thing. But without talking too much about Vitality, I actually want to take it to Excel instead, because I actually think that their laners in Nuke and towards the bot lane performed super well. What I want to take a look at first, specifically, would be Nuke summoner spells, or Nuke itemization, itemization, if that's what you want to call it, against the Vex. Because as we already talked about, Vex does really well against the burst that comes out for LeBlanc when she goes electrocute or something like that, where you want to pop it. But Nuke went for summon area instead, where you poke them down slowly with the Q every time, so there's no good for Vex to pop the shield. Nuke did a phenomenal job at keeping Perkz in lane, being a level ahead of him all the time. So that gets you a mid lane all of a sudden, where Perkz is not allowed to move around on the Vex, which plays nicely into a win condition for Excel and stops a win condition for Vitality. Now, what's also super good, it's the fact that you get the lethality Sire on the side of XL with the summon area as well. Reason why that is super nice is because you're playing into the Jinx with the lethal tempo that's ups the extra range when she builds up the stacks. But you never let a Jinx stack up the passive, because all you do is poke. You just throw the Q out, you've maxed Q on Sire, you take control of the lane. And because of this, despite the draft that came out initially from Vitality, XL actually does a phenomenal job at creating their own winning lanes, trade objective on opposite sides of Vitality, great Drake control, which gets them the soul, which, I mean, high roll, that's an infernal soul out of nowhere. But outside of that, I think XL did a phenomenal job at closing out the game. A little shaky Elder fight, but still super good job.
You guys are all shaming my boy Finn right here. You're like, he entered early in his lane, he died in the early. Who closed out the game? Who put that last nail on the coffin for Vitality? It was Finn at that Elder Dragon fight, because when the fight commenced, he pulled that teleport straight into the base. He knew that the Vitality members were going to commit to that.
But who got them there? And then once again, Nuke and Patrick. And that's also great for our key player of the game. That was Patrick with 58% of the vote. So despite Finn having the nice damage numbers, don't forget the guy that got you there. It's a great backpack from the side of Patrick. But with that, Trouble, thank you for having me. In our next game, we'll see if Rogue can go undefeated in week 1 as they face off against Astralis. So Medi, Vedi, over to you.
Woo!
Nice.
Great to see you both on the Analyst desk, or in the Analyst area in front of the Telestrator. What do we call that area of the... I was going to say of the map. I've been playing too much League of Legends.
It's actually called Vedius Television.
Is it?
Kevin wasn't keen of that, but Kevin's not here right now, so he can't dispute me.
He went off to Valorant. Like, screw him.
Yeah.
Depper is well on board with the Vedivision.
Thank you, Depper. Thank you
very much, man.
Vedius Television. Anyway, we're here for Rogue versus Astralis. This one should be an interesting one, largely because Rogue is currently sitting undefeated right now. Astralis is looking for their first win of the splits, but they're going to have to go through Rogue, who have been known as the regular season Titans. They may very well be able to hold on to that moniker as we are getting ready for the draft. You're seeing the players on your screen, new players for both rosters, and things looking good for the start of the split for Rogue. So the things I wanted to draw attention to is that Rogue has been on blue in every single one of their games so far, and and they have typically always banned Jayce and Lee Sin while they have been on the blue side. So let's see if they maintain this trend and if they want to keep removing that. Already they're going to change things up, get rid of the Corki. We've already seen how much of a late game threat he can be, and with the scaling nature that we've been seeing a lot of in the current meta, it's no surprise to see that taken off the board. Yeah, no surprises at all. The rockets are ballistic missiles, to say the least, when it gets towards the late game. There's the Lucian ban we were talking about. The LeBlanc taken away by Astralis, so a lot of mid lane focus here. 3 of the first 4 bans from both these teams trying to pinch that mid lane pool. Twisted Fate has actually always been banned against Rogue so far this split, and that shouldn't be a surprise. For those that were avid followers of the LEC last split, you may remember Larssen's Twisted Fate. It was quite the menace. It was. Teams were very afraid to give that over to him. And we have a lot of very good Twisted Fate players here in Europe, and that is going to continue to sit on the ban table. With Vex being removed, the mid lane pool continues to shrink, and this immediately raises the priority of champions like Viktor. But this Jayce, this Lee that Rogue have so far always banned while being on blue side are both being left open. So we'll see what they decide to do with these 2 picks. Caitlyn, a common ban these days as well. Astralis using their final ban on the red side to take that away. Now, things like the Jinx and the Aphelios obviously rise up in terms of priority. Generally, Jinx has been more favored here in Europe alongside the Jhin. Haven't seen that much Aphelios as of yet, but there's the Jinx locked in for Rogue. Comp will be taking that. 3 games on that so far in the LEC. And he's had a pretty good performance on it overall, doing about 35% of his team's damage on the champion. Yeah, it seems that Rogue is in a very confident teamfight style of play. When they get themselves a good scaling AD carry in the form of the Jinx, they're feeling pretty happy already. Jhin is not that surprising of an answer. And normally we would see this paired up with the Jhin Zhao, as we've been joking about, is often the first rotation on the red side. But an early Leona, with Thresh still up, Rogue have a lot of options. We know that Trymbi does love his engaged supports. He could go for something like an Alistair if he wants to disengage from the Leona. But like right now, Trymbi kind of has all the options in the world to answer what Astralis have already shown. One thing it does do is kind of take Trymbi away from a pure Enchanter support, though. Leona good into Lulu, good into Rakan as well, can just lock them down and burst them pretty quickly. So I wonder if Astralis is saying, well, we don't want you to have an Enchanter alongside the Jinx for that pure teamfight scaling. Instead, we want you to pick something like the Thresh for more disengage in the laning phase. But instead of that, Rogue are going to go towards the Viktor in the mid lane. Larssen on a scaling mid lane mage. He's synonymous with him. It's basically what he made his name on, and now Rogue probably going to look towards their support here, but they could instead actually go for the Jayce themselves. Yeah, so by not banning the Jayce and the Lee, they're basically calling out that, you know what, even though they are strong in the meta, Astralis, we don't think you're going to prioritize them that much. And we know Zanzarah, he's not much of a Lee Sin player. He typically likes to go towards things like the Trundle is usually his go-to. This is something that teams often ban away from him, especially in the second phase, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Rogue remove that away from him. The question is, do Astralis want to lock that in now? Ooh, we're going to get an Akali. This is great. I've been playing so much Akali recently. I know you have, because it's all you ever talk about, Vedius. I love Akali right now. In pro play, we've seen her primarily in the top lane. Rascal had a fantastic performance against a Gwen on it over in the LCK to great effect. Earlier in the day, we also saw it come out in the DK versus Jhin matchup, so it's been very common in the top lane. Had such a great game. Yeah, he was playing into a Poppy, so it wasn't super fun. But we'll see where this Akali is going. Expectations are that it will be in the mid lane, but that's yet to be seen. So the Thresh now going to be removed from the side of Astralis. No real surprise. Meanwhile, Rogue are going to try and limit this jungle pool. They're going to remove the Jarvan. Wouldn't be surprised to see the Trundle removed as well. I agree with you there. There's the Lee Sin getting banned out by Astralis themselves. As you said, Zanzarah, not the champion that he is most known for, although I'm sure he's still very proficient on it. Rogue now looking for that final ban will probably be the Trundle. And for Rogue, we have their support and their jungler left to pick. And for Astralis, we have probably their top lane and jungle, but it could be their mid lane and jungle left. So what's the final ban here going to be for Rogue? We did talk about the Trundle. Do they feel that it's threatening enough to remove it? No, they're instead going to remove the Malphite from WhiteKnight. This is often considered a pretty good answer into the Jayce. The laning phase in the early stages can be pretty rough, but at a certain point it will start to swing in the favor of the Malphite, and just you don't want to give more engaged tools when you paired up with the Leona over towards Astralis as well. So right now, Rogue really does need that engage option. I'm surprised that they would choose to ban away the Jarvan themselves. I would have thought that that would be something that would fit very nicely with the composition that they've gotten for themselves. But yeah, we'll see what direction they decide to go in. Still a couple of junglers left open. The Viego is an example, but if they do lock in the Viego, you know that Zanzarah is going to go for the Trundle. And right now, it does seem that they're just waiting for that counter pick option for him. And right now, they're hovering it. They know that it is an option.
It's not often we see jungle left for last pick. Now, this would be something that fits the sort of enchanter support idea. Lux can give you a lot of lane priority, but instead, it looks like Rogue are going towards the Trundle themselves. Trymbi hovering singed in honor of Lehens, who won with the champion earlier today. Everyone is bigging up his flip in the final fight. Any support with engage could have done that. His positioning was great, but the fact it was singed did not matter at all.
Lehens, you know, like
no,
you hate Lehens on singed.
Incredibly well.
Wow, you know, Medic. Come on, man. Come on. Come on. It's all the singed, man. Singed is meta.
Actually,
everyone needs to play it in solo queue now.
Yeah, that's good, because I'm the other support, so I can beat all these new singed. There we go. Excellent. Instead, it's going to be Rakan for Trymbi. A little bit of enchanter, a little bit of engage possibility for them as well. Obviously, slippy enough that he can get away from this Leona in the bottom lane, but pretty squishy. If he ever does get caught by Leona Jhin, he is going to be burst down.
I am very surprised that Zanzarah would answer with the Viego. When Viego was very prominent in the meta last split, it was actually Zanzarah's Trundle that was brought out as an answer to it. Many other junglers in Europe picked it up as a means to counter the Viego because you can out-duel him in the early game, you can make him much squishier later on because of your ability to steal stats, you can steal his attack damage. Like, Trundle is just such a great answer into the Viego. I'm very surprised to see this come out from Zanzarah, but he knows Trundle better than anyone, so he's got to feel confident in his pick. But when we kind of look at Rogue's draft in total, very good scaling, as you would often expect. Just because they have the Viktor and they have the Jinx, they have that long range. They also have the engage from the Rakan. Very well-rounded, very strong team fighting. Meanwhile, for Astralis, they have a little bit more of an early game presence. Akali, once she hits that level 6, is going to be nicely looking to potentially set up for roams. Can work very well towards the top side of the map when they have things like the Renekton. Maybe they look to stack a wave. We'll have to wait and see as Rogue and Astralis are jumping onto the Rift for the third game of the day.
As we jump onto Summoner's Rift, as you say, Rogue with a strong scaling composition. Now, I will mention, Rogue often seen as a methodical, more slow-paced team, or at least less action team, but they actually have one of the fastest average game times in the league so far. Only 2 games in it, of course, but they are 6 minutes quicker than our league average game time at 30 minutes compared to 36 minutes. So
our league average is 36 minutes.
Well,
right
yeah,
now.
but you have to remember, the Cadril co-stream happened yesterday. So we had, out of 10 games, one of them was almost as long as 2 games put together.
That's true. That is very true. Yeah, but that kind of goes back to the thing I was talking about on Twitter. The average game time all over the world right now definitely feels longer. I loved hearing from a lot of the fans on Twitter discussing their different ideas. And I think that there's a general consensus that right now the meta really is very much about the scaling picks. I mean, you only have to look at Rogue, Jinx plus Viktor. These types of compositions are rewarded the later the game that you go, which means that games will often be decided by the Elder Dragon, right? You're often getting to those late game points where a single Baron actually isn't enough to end the game on.
It seems like a single Elder Dragon isn't enough to end the game on
more
these
often
days
than
as well.
not. And also, if you make that mistake, objective bounties can very quickly equalize the disadvantage that you're at. And the Mad Lions SK game is a really clean example of that, where SK was very far ahead. A single fight where they got the Elder into the Baron from Mad suddenly equalized the gold, and suddenly we found ourselves with very close team fights once more. So I expect this game to be on the long side, but as you rightly said, Rogue have actually been very good at being able to close out games when they find themselves with a lead. So let's have a look and see what they're up to in the early game. So I looked at Rogue's side of the jungle and I was like, none of the jungle camps are being cleared, and then I realized that's because Malrang is starting on the red buff. He's stealing away the top side of the map away from Zanzarah, creating a map split situation, which very much plays around Odoamne on this Jayce. When you do have the Jayce, enabling him in the early game is great for Zanzarah, not going to realize that his top side has been stolen.
I think he's realized it now. He's going down towards the bottom side of the map. And I will say, something that Malrang did here, because he's Trundle and he sustains well through the jungle, he used a control ward to remove the first ward by the Razorbeaks, and then swept as he went round towards the red buff to make sure that he wasn't spotted out. You can see Zanzarah was a little delayed on his decision-making to come over to this red, and that's probably because he wasn't 100% sure that Rogue had gone all the way into his jungle.
So, good adaptation here from Zanzarah, and as you rightly said, this now creates the map split that we were talking about. What does this mean? Well, WhiteKnight is basically left in isolation in the top lane. He's not going to get any jungle assistance. With Akali being pushed underneath her tower, it's very unlikely that she's going to receive any help towards the top side of the map as well. Meanwhile, WhiteKnight is at a very real risk of getting dived. Notice that Larssen's keeping the pressure up in mid, making this an isolated 2 versus 1. Odoamne has a level lead, and here comes the dive.
WhiteKnight does have the Fury stacked up here. They're going to wait for that first auto attack. First shock blast miss. There's the stun onto Malrang underneath the tower. Malrang's dead. And what is it with top laners in Europe and outplaying dives? WhiteKnight survives, will fall to the final auto attack. Odo's going to take one tower shot from the tower and be able to get out.
Wow. Obviously, a very risky dive there, as you rightly identified, Medic. The Fury was fully built up from WhiteKnight, and he really did the best that he could. Malrang recognizes that he's lost his life, so he doesn't even bother flashing, but now we have to draw attention to the bot lane. Zanzarah looking for a dive of his own.
Might just be trying to collect the Krugs. promisq and Kobbe stepping up. promisq will eat the knock up there from Trymbi. promisq going for the Glacial Augment means he's not that tanky underneath the tower if he does decide to try and turn things around. Aftershock obviously slightly better in terms of pure stats when you're looking for a dive like that. Let's have another look back at the top lane though.
So crucially, you'll notice that Odoamne is going to miss the initial shock blast, which obviously isn't great. That's a lot of damage. Then the long stun comes through onto Malrang. He knows he's dead. He doesn't bother flashing. He just tries to do as much damage to WhiteKnight as possible. I suppose you could argue that the good news here for Odoamne is that he gets himself a double buff, along with a kill up towards the top side of the map. So not an ideal dive, but WhiteKnight does lose an entire wave. It does force him to use his teleport very early on into the lane, and he will find himself in a very disadvantaged situation when going up against Odoamne in the 1v1.
Odoamne in a very strong position with the serrated Dirk already complete. And even has that tier, so Manamune on its way, possibly, for him. Astralis getting pushed down towards this bottom lane underneath their tower, but this is just Rogue trying to get a reset off. Expectation is that Comp has enough gold to go back and get himself up towards that noon quiver. And meanwhile in the mid lane, Larsen's developed a slight CS lead, about 13, 14 ahead. There's a couple of extra minions here for Dajor, so it'll end up being around 10. But of course, Akali struggles a little bit into Viktor in the early game because of that ranged into melee matchup.
Yeah, exactly that. Normally, Akali does very well into melee matchups because she just slightly outranges them. But in a situation like this, often you'll even see Viktor's running first strike to try and take advantage of the fact that you do have such a long range. You can bully these melee matchups and just generate that extra bit of gold. But instead, Larssen going for the slightly more aggressive approach with Aerie, also very common. As we're seeing another trade in the top lane that WhiteKnight definitely did not come out favorably in. But WhiteKnight does have assistance from Zanzarah, and you can see promisq on his way towards the top side as well.
Perhaps expecting a dive. Dajor ignited. Will be able to escape underneath his tower. You can see actually Malrang on his way up here as well. Both the junglers going to meet for the first time in the game. promisq with the control ward. Spotted out the fact that Malrang was waiting around the corner. And this is more just Astralis playing to let WhiteKnight reset and get the lane pushed up. Of course, getting a gank on Odoamne would be great, but Odoamne does still have the flash and would be able to escape any real engage opportunity.
Good stuff from Astralis, assisting out the top side, and they know where Malrang is as well, which means that this Drake isn't going to be traded. Kobbe, with his good awareness, is able to push in the wave and should be able to get a reset off as well. Oh, actually, it looks like it just got interrupted there. Now, this wave is in a bit of an awkward spot for Dajor. He will be forced to overextend, and again, notice promisq's positioning. There to cover for Dajor. Of course, does still have his flash, also has his ultimate to help him get out of any sticky situation, but he wants to try and get this wave underneath the tower as quickly as possible so that he can get the bounce back. There we are, successfully done. And this is just really great team play overall from Astralis, helping out their laners who need that help in the early game, given the pressure that is coming out from Rogue's top and mid.
Yeah, smart stuff all around. Smart. Incredibly good stuff all around from Astralis, just making sure that they didn't lose out too much. And although we haven't seen the junglers butt heads themselves so far, as Zanzarah and promisq, perhaps looking for a gank here. Comp has flash, has cleanse. Do you go back to your tower here, or do you try and retreat to the tier 2? There's the stun only onto Trymbi. Zanzarah, I mean, this is another wave pushing towards the tower for Kobbe. He's going to be very happy with this state of affairs. 15 CS up right now, 14. That's another plate for him as well, the second of the game. Kobbe also has the curtain call available. level 6 already on that Jhin, and because promisq's been roaming around so much, Kobbe has just had the rule of the roost down towards this bottom lane.
It's one of the advantages of Jhin. While he's not the safest in isolation, when playing into a Jinx, there's no way that he'll lose that straight up 1v1. There's no real risk of him being run down. Meanwhile, you can see the Akali fighting with the Trundle right now.
That was a good flash away. It's actually a replay, Vedi.
Ah, okay,
That's
sorry.
Right. You see that little replay thing on the side?
Yeah, okay, I missed the replay. I then also recognized that Trundle was on my screen, so I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Yes, that did in fact happen. Flashes for flashes were exchanged. You got to see some of the early game power there from Dajor. Bit of a shame that he's forced to go for magic resistance in the early game. That will delay his first spike, which is that Hextech Alternator. Once he gets that item, that's really when Akali starts to be able to dish out damage, trade pretty well against many opposition in the mid lane. But being forced to play slightly more defensively means that this Akali won't be dealing damage in the immediate future.
It's strange how little actual fighting has happened in this game. And oh, Zanzarah looked for the flash snipe but couldn't get it. Malrang now puts the subjugate down, has already picked up the Eye of the Herald. Will fall. WhiteKnight will get the kill, but the Herald was secured by Malrang.
See, I understand now. Zanzarah is now back on his Trundle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was all part of the plan, was it? You think you're playing Trundle? No, I am in fact playing Trundle. And they are able to get that kill. And that is off the back of Dajor getting his flash earlier on. He had no way to get out. He wasn't able to get any assistance from the rest of his team. And we continue to see promisq being slightly ahead of Trymbi on the roams, working very well with Zanzarah to just assist the rest of the team and look for picks. Now we can see 4 members of Astralis hovering around mids. Level 6 for Zanzarah, only level 5 promisq.
Good flash away from Larssen.
Just be a trade of flashes there.
The thing with that is, if that flash Zenith Blade lands, you then have the follow-up from Kobbe with the root, you've got the stun with the Shield of Daybreak, you've got Dajor jumping in with the perfect execution. You are dead to rights there as Larssen, even though you're quite far away from the rest of the Astralis players. Rogue here will, Odoamne here will catch the wave in the top lane. Kobbe's pushing in the bottom side, and while we have a moment, do you just want to highlight that although Zanzarah and Malrang haven't met too many times before, they did have a little bit of a verbal dispute on Twitter earlier today. Zanzarah, Malrang, are you ready to play versus a Russian jungler? You know what Malrang replied?
That's a ratio if I've ever seen one. Wow, Malrang
Who
really
are
just
you
didn't
plus L plus ratio?
You fell off. Yeah. Wow. I mean, to be fair, Malrang was a player who was questioned coming in, especially when compared to a player like Inspired.
Yeah.
It was a player that, you know, a lot of people didn't have a huge amount of confidence in, but his first 2 games were impressive. He really has had a big impact for Rogue. I really liked his awareness and how he reads the map, and already in this early game, he set up Odoamne for success, even at the cost of his own life. Still doing very well in the farm department, though, and is now looking for a gank. Level 6 for Trymbi.
And he's going to go in with the quickness. Flash onto the back line. The flame choppers come down, and Kobbe with a good flash over it. Dodges the super mega death rocket as well. We'll be able to disengage this. Curtains will open. Trymbi should just be able to dodge behind Comp. Zanzarah is on his way, but won't get here early enough to really impact the play.
Wow, those chompers didn't quite connect with Kobbe there. The combo was nicely done, but I'm not sure if Comp was just a little too late or if he was just outside of range, but because the chompers didn't trigger, as we see a bit of a skirmish in top lane, I can't imagine that's going to result in much.
Oh, but Dale's on his way.
Dajor, yeah.
Odo trying to turn it around onto WhiteKnight. Good flash away. Dodges the damage there as Odoamne is able to escape.
That was actually a really good flash from Odoamne, because the thing with Akali is you can actually animation cancel your ult. Ooh, oh, it interrupts it!
And Kobbe has no summoners, nowhere to go. Flame Chompers once again a little bit short, but this will be gifted over to Comp.
Ooh, ever so slight mistake there from Kobbe, backing in the middle of the lane. Was not expecting Malrang to just show up. Can't really blame him for that one, but he does end up getting punished for it. Will mean that Rogue equalize the kill score, find themselves with a 1k gold lead.
And that's only going to
a bunch of plates.
This is Rift Herald, I think. Malrang, they'll probably try and get the first plate off this and then put down the Rift Herald. Malrang standing around, there it goes. First plate down. Now this won't take down the tower in its totality. 3 members around that tower means it has increased resistances as that first plate fell. You can see just a little bit short. Zanzarah should be able to clean it up, but instead they decide to back away. Rogue staying strong as 3 players. Means that Astralis didn't want to take the fight.
Nicely done. And you can see how these small mistakes can be so quickly punished by the side of Rogue. Kobbe just backing in the middle of the lane. And because he gets caught out, ends up losing his life and gives a tower over towards Rogue. That's nearly a 3k gold lead at 12 minutes. And we talked about it yesterday when we were casting Rogue Medic, but what was core to the success of Rogue during the regular season last split was they had strong, consistent performing laners all across the board that basically allowed Inspired to do whatever he wanted. Yep. They were a team that by having strong laners, allowed their jungler to do what he wanted, and in turn, Inspired then used his pressure to then assist his laners. And we're seeing a very similar approach. Malrang is a little more lane-focused than I would say Inspired was, really making sure that his team's wave states are set up for success. Is Trymbi in a bit of danger here?
Slices across the wall as Trymbi should just be able to walk this one out. And as you say, Malrang a little bit more focused on getting ganks off and being a supportive jungler at times. I think part of that is the current jungle meta. You know, we're not seeing the full-on farmers as Trymbi now caught out with the solar flare. There's the stun, there's the Ruthless Predator, curtain cuts open, and the battle dance will get Trymbi out to safety.
Well, that's a lot actually invested there from Astralis. Two ultimates and Ignite, and Trymbi just swags his way out of that one.
It is one of the best feelings as a Rakan. Like, I've played a lot of Rakan recently.
Oh, have you?
I'm not a one-trick, no. But I have 60 games on that and 8 on my next most played.
Yes.
But it's just so fun because like they put all of this down on you. You can see he went from the Merc Treads early for a bit of tenacity against the Leona. Makes a lot of sense. And as soon as they try and CC chain you, you're just like, see you later. I'm outie. Swish swoosh.
Swish swoosh.
That's what he says.
Swiggity swoo?
No, no swiggity swoos. He says swish swish because of his cape.
Ah.
Swish, swish.
Do you know all of the Rakan quotes?
Not off by heart, but I could, like, if he says one, I'll be like, yeah, I knew that was one of his quotes.
Yeah, well, do you want to know one of Akali's quotes?
No.
I'm not here to make friends, medic, so get the message. Now, back into the game. Let's have a look at this. Odoamne pushing in the bot side of the map. Dajor sitting at about 50% HP. And you can see right now, Rogue playing towards the top side. That tower is open and exposed for them to look to secure. And they're just using Malrang, doing what we were already talking about, looking to cover for his lanes, making sure that he's playing around the strong side of the map. Odoamne, for the time being, playing on that weak side, but you can see that he's still very far ahead. He's not really at risk of being killed by WhiteKnight, so he's only continuing to build up that lead, and Rogue continue to dominate the map. 14.5 minutes in, they find themselves with a 4.5k gold lead, 2 towers to 0. The next streak spawns in 20 seconds. They're not really in the best position to contest it, but they don't care, because Rift Herald is up, and they can then use that to take the next tower. And this really is reminiscent of the Rogue of last split. They are very objective focused. They do a great job of utilizing their prior lanes to move around the map, and while they're not super bloodthirsty, very clean, very controlled gameplay from Rogue, and then they're setting themselves up nicely for that scaling team fighting, which they have become so well known for.
A lot of people ask how Rogue would start off the season, comp and Malrang seen as, you know, downgrades, and they probably overall still are when you look at it in a net situation. You know, Hans Sommer, one of the best AD carries last season, Inspired, probably the best jungler last season as well. But Rogue definitely coming off to a very strong start. Now, they have only played up against Misfits, SK, and now Astralis, so more difficult challenges lie in their future. But to come out of the first Super Week 3-0 when you are 6th of the way through the season is a very good look for Rogue.
And I will say that Rogue, their biggest strength throughout the last year was finishing first at the end of the regular season. And why was that? Because they were very consistent. The only teams they ever really lost to were other top teams. And it's the level of expectation that you have for an organization that pretty consistently finished top 3 is Odoamne.
WhiteKnight picks up the bounty. Odoamne thought he could take the trade, but the Heartbreaker will find its mark. Zanzarah pierces the heart of Odoamne as he dies the first time this game.
Big punish there from Astralis. As you rightly identified, Odoamne felt like he could win out on that exchange. He has a level advantage. He's pretty strong in terms of itemization. He was not expecting Zanzarah to come out from the jungle, flash in, and get himself that kill. So Astralis now leading kills, still behind in gold, about 3k. And Rogue have their eyes set on this mid lane tier 1. It's the only outer tower left to secure. Zanzarah saying, no, no, no. I'm going to make sure that this wave contest is not as easy as you want it to be.
Still a 3,000 gold lead for Rogue at the 16.5 minute mark. A dragon apiece, though, means we're not on our way to an early soul. With it being a cloud, I doubt it would be too contested by either of these teams. promisq's back there, just stop. Malrang on the chase, so onto WhiteKnight. Subjugate available to Malrang if he wants to use it, but that's a 2-level advantage for the Croc. And the Troll will just walk back to the Scuttlecrab.
Let's have a look back at this 1v1. Oh, and you can really understand why Odoamne goes to this. WhiteKnight lives on a sliver, and that flash for Zanzarah literally saves his life. Odoamne for sure would have had that kill, but the jungler coming in clutch there from Astralis and Zanzarah, definitely making himself known in this game. Let's see if Malrang will pay attention to him. Right now, a level down.
I wonder if he knows who he is by now.
Well, he knows that there's a jungler on the enemy team, that's for sure.
You know what? Oh. if Zanzarah wins by possessing Malrang, he should just reply with the screenshot and say, "I'm you."
But better?
But better.
Right, yeah. See, I mean, he has to throw in the shade, you know what I mean?
This is why we're the comedy duo act, right? We can't do jokes by ourselves. Trymbi here, gonna get chased a little bit by Zanzarah, who uses the Spectral Maul to dodge back. Zenith Blade's gonna connect, and there is the follow-up from Kobbe. The damage on Trymbi is huge, but he just can't get it down. Larssen able to turn it back around as Zanzarah falls. Larssen flashes forward, and the Death Ray finds its mark. A double for Larssen, his first 2 contributions to this game. And now Odoamne and Malrang are chasing WhiteKnight and Dajor out. Larssen on his way down. Comp will take the tower in the mid lane. Trymbi with an ultimate available to him. Very low on HP, but I've seen support sacrifice themselves for the good of the team in this sort of situation. Dominus now popped by WhiteKnight as Larssen continues to work his way around.
He doesn't have his ultimate, but he knows that Astralis, they're in a defensive position right now. They're looking to retreat. Oh, Malrang is here.
Do they stop the backs? Dajor's going to stop it now. Gravity Field coming down. Dajor able to use the Twilight Shroud to get away. Malrang underneath the tower is able just to walk forward, walk back, and escape with the rest of Rogue.
Well, I was going to say that I think Rogue are over-investing their time at this point because Astralis have had an opportunity to get back out onto the map. Let's have a look back at this fight in the mid lane. So the engage goes on to Trymbi. Of course, he does have the Merc Treads. He invests the initial knock-up. Then his dash gets interrupted, but he still has that second dash, which he uses to jump over to Comp. Then Larssen just drops his whole combo down onto promisq and Zanzarah, completely melting them. And yeah, that's just Viktor damage. He only has the crown, even nerfed since its release. Slightly less AP, but still, Viktor level, once he gets the 2 points in his ultimate, has a lot of damage, working towards that Shadow Flame right now. And yeah, it's one of those things where, like, when we come back to this composition from Astralis and you kind of look at it in its entirety, doesn't have the strongest laners. They got bullied around top and bot. The map got split, and they weren't really able to punish on the bot side. promisq, on the few dives that they did make, neither of them really panned out, which meant that Astralis weren't really gaining anything on the bot side of the map, where they was losing a lot in mid and top. They ended up losing the bot tower as well after a single misplay from Kobbe, and then once that singular strong point from Astralis fell apart, Rogue very quickly took control over the entire map, moving Comp around, using him to take down these towers, and now they're 4 towers to 1. Rogue with a really good map sense, very good control since the early game, and overall just great team synergy, and a very solid team play overall that we're seeing from Rogue.
Yeah, 4,500 gold ahead at the moment as well, and with 2 items already complete on Comp, the Runan second. I believe that's what he's been going most of his, well, both of his Jinx games so far. Really likes that AoE damage in a team fight, and when these 2 teams are likely to group up as 5 and try and play against each other, it makes sense to try and get those rockets on as many targets as possible. Cloud Drake an option for both these teams, but neither of them anywhere near soul points, so my expectation is that Astralis would be willing to give this one up. You really can't fight when you're at such a deficit.
Well, they are in a position to look for it. The TP comes through.
Well, the Dragon's already down, and so is promisq, and I think perhaps they should have given that one up. The TP did come in, as you say, from WhiteKnight. He's going to dodge across the wall, but Rogue are on the chase, and Trymbi still has the quickness. Death Ray connects just on the tail of WhiteKnight. Zanzarah flashing forward, they're looking for Larssen. They just don't have the damage to take him out. He survived for so damn long. In the end, he will fall, his crown truly shattered. But Rogue walk out with the Dragon, with a Cloud, with 4 kills, and with a 6,000 gold lead.
Yeah, it's just a very one-sided affair from Rogue. They're now making their way straight towards the Baron. And without wasting any time, let's look right back into it. So the TP comes in very late. Jhin isn't quite in position yet. That means the promisq, the engage, suddenly disappears. And with the Dragon gone, Rogue know that they can just commit to the fight. Kobbe is completely zoned away. And look at this gravity field that comes out from Larssen, forcing Astralis members to be in a very sticky situation. Zanzarah comes over, Dajor commits the flash. The Crown soaks up a lot of damage along with the Guardian, but with the Chaos Storm sitting on top, with Comp very safely in a position, the Odoamne damage as well. It's just too much for Astralis to handle, and they fall short. And can we just very quickly, did Larssen get the Baron as well? I'm not sure if he was able to revive in time right there.
We'll have a look when he comes back on us.
He did. So all 5 members of Rogue even got the Baron, even though Larssen died as well. So just Rogue showcasing a very dominant performance, and I will say that when we saw Astralis' previous games, they were pretty competitive. They were quite up and down, quite messy. We saw them actually going toe-to-toe, but I feel like they love the team so far in this...
Oh! He's still likely to die here. The Crown won't save him. A great stun off the back of it, though, as Trymbi goes forward. I'm not sure what Larssen was doing apart from trying to style on some flipping kids. He was breaking ankles for a second, and then his back was broken in the river.
He had flash and he had stopwatch. Now, admittedly, he was CC'd for too long to be able to use the stopwatch, but yeah, I'm not entirely sure either. Now, promisq could be in a similar situation.
Could try and turn this around, though, because the rest of Astralis are just waiting around the corner. Zenith Blade only hits onto one. Now we go in. Dominus popped Malrang, going to get chased down here, tries to turn it onto Dajor, and Malrang actually just kills off Zanzarah. Another kill comes out as he gets the double. Astralis try to bite off a little bit more than they could chew, and they were chewed up by the troll Malrang.
Wow, okay, so Larssen's mistake ends up being an advantage for Rogue, as Astralis invested a lot to get that initial kill. Odoamne looking for the poke. Will take half of Kobbe's HP. Yeah, sounds about right.
No.
Okay, so that was 75% with, what, 3 abilities? Accelerator, Q, ult.
Yep, balance.
Seems good, seems good.
I heckin' love League of
I
Legends,
heckin' love powder. You know, Rogue really are Arcane fans. You know what I mean?
It's a glorious evolution.
It is indeed a glorious... Well, spoilers.
Well, no, that's one of Viktor's quotes. It's
no,
a glorious...
I know, but that's the joke. It's the lane. Engage in the top lane.
Oh, here trying to get out. Astralis, not fans of the hit Netflix TV show, apparently. Okay, I think we've done enough Arcane. I think we cut with the Arcane as... yeah, Odo escapes. Rogue get the inhibitors. And Astralis can only watch and wait as Rogue push in for the win. A 24-minute victory on the cards here for Rogue. They continue to bring their game time down even further. And Astralis just can't defend. Dale's trying to do what he can. Larssen, crown breaks. There's the Soul Affair. promisq with the flank, but he's popped before he can even stop with that Zenith Blade. Trymbi gets a great charm onto Dale, who is invisible at the time. Onto the fountain go Kobbe and Zanzarah. They will survive. Dale will not. As he is killed off by Larssen. The curtains open, but it's curtains for Astralis, as Rogue will be the first team to go undefeated in the LEC Week 1.
A 24-minute stomp from Rogue. They maintain that title of being the fastest team in the LEC, and all we've seen is controlled gameplay from this Rogue squad. Yes, they have picked more scaling compositions, admittedly, but they haven't been relying on these late-game team fights. They've done what they've always done. They've played around their strong laners. They've consistently dominated the early game, and while you can admit that the opposition they've been playing against has been more towards the middle or bottom of the pack when you set your expectations around the LEC as a whole, but with Rogue coming in with big changes in their roster, to see them performing at this level already, I think that you have to take into consideration that Rogue is definitely a threat, one that you have to respect as we continue on during the LEC regular season.
Definitely agree with you there, Vedi. Of course, Astralis, on the other hand, 0-3 on the week. They've had a couple of good performances, but this one was not one of those, as they really struggled to do anything against Rogue.
The bright side is they're tied with Vitality, you know? Ups and downs.
Yes. Key player of the game votes at LEC on Twitter. Odoamne, Comp, and Trymbi are your options.
It's a tough one.
It's a tough one.
I think Malrang needs to be thrown on a couple of these.
I do, yeah, I think Malrang had a really, really good game.
He really, really did. But it's a tough one. It really was a very well-played team effort from everyone. And Rogue, definitely a team worth keeping your eyes on as we move into Week 2.
Yeah, and as Rogue went undefeated in Week 1, Laure will be joined by their support Trymbi to talk about their 3-0 start after the break.